Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. How has 2023 been to each and every one of you? I was just talking to my presenter a few minutes ago, and we were like, it is 10th of January. Goodness, we just celebrated New Year yesterday, and today we are 10th. Like, it is well. Like I said, as usual, I'll be giving just 1 minute to allow you guys to come in before we start the business of the day. Yeah, I can see quite a number of familiar names on my attendees list. Welcome, guys, to 2023. Promise you guys that today is going to be superb. We have a wonderful presenter in our midst today, and the topic is so good. I believe we still have a couple of people that still works at home remotely. How has it been? Those in the office, those coffee shop, those caught up on traffic. Hope everything has been moving on smoothly. Okay, like I said, I'll be giving just 1 minute. I just checked my watch and I discovered that I've exhausted 1 minute. Again, I will just take it up from here, even as more people join us for the event. Good afternoon once again and welcome for those of you that are joining us for the first time. My name is Gagba Esahaya and I'm a training coordinator with the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple Small Business Development Center helps small businesses start and grow. We offer free one-on-one consulting and a variety of low to no cost webinars. We are part of the nationally accredited network of the Small Business Development Centers, which has over 1,000 networks across the United States. We're here this afternoon for a webinar on understanding cybersecurity. A copy of the PowerPoint and the link to the recording will be sent to all the attendees. Being a webinar, all the attendees have been muted. However, we always encourage you guys to drop your questions on the Q&A or the chat box. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome my wonderful speaker, even as she takes over the floor for the presentation. Sheila, you are welcome.
Thank you, Garba. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for Understanding Cybersecurity. The webinar today is being put on by Temple University's Small Business Development Center, hosted by Temple's Fox School of Business. The Small Business Development Center has been serving the small businesses of Philadelphia, Eastern Montgomery, and Lower Bucks counties since 1983. Our mission is to provide entrepreneurs and business owners the knowledge needed to make smart decisions and to prosper. I'm Sheila Bishop, a business consultant with the SBDC. I have more than 35 years of various IT experience, from being a developer to an engineer to a manager. My most recent experience from before the SBDC was I was the Vice President of Monitoring Services Operations at Bank of America. I have a BA in computer science from Temple University, and actually my dog passed away over Christmas, so I was a dog owner and I'm an inveterate knitter. I know, it's very sad. I have to update that slide. Today's agenda, we're going to be talking about what is cybersecurity, some common threats, viruses, rootkits, ransomware, etc., and how you can secure your system. And we'll also be talking about some of the emerging threats of 2023. So what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is the practice of protecting networks, servers, and all internet-connected devices from unauthorized access and malicious attacks. How you handle and protect your data is central to the security of your business. Every business should plan for the unexpected, and that's including the loss and theft of data. This is especially true in our increasingly connected world. The Internet of Things refers to the network of connected devices and objects in our world, right? Those can be computers, baby monitors, our smart homes, our smart cars, our wearables, right? We love these things. They make our lives more interesting, easier, but more than we love them, cyber criminals love them, right? Because they give them more points of access and more ways to gather data from us, data we don't want them to have. So why do we need cybersecurity? We need them to protect our own personal data, but we also need them to protect, if we have a small business or any kind of business, you need them to protect your business's data. It protects your Cybersecurity protects your reputation, it limits your liability, and it reduces the cost of recovering from a cybercrime. It also keeps your customers' data secure, which is something that customers absolutely expect you to do. And it increases your employees' productivity. It's, even though setting up a good cybersecurity plan and putting it into action might seem take time and might be a little costly, it greatly reduces the time you would spend recovering from an attack. Some attacks that really point this out are, in 2017, Equifax was attacked by malicious actors, and 147 million people's data was compromised. In 2013, Target was attacked, and I think I'm sure more than just me on this call was affected. 40 million people's credit cards data was compromised, and 70 million customer records data was put out there in the dark web. And in 2011, Sony's PlayStation again was attacked, and personal information of 77 million account holders was dropped into the hands of malicious actors. So what are some common threats? Malware, right? Why do people do it? The drivers for the malicious actors are it's fun, it's profitable, it can cause harm, right? Cyber criminals seek to exploit human weaknesses or security vulnerabilities to obtain goods and money, right? So they're doing it for financial gain, for recognition, and for political motivation. Different types of it are viruses, worms, rootkits, and ransomware. So what's a computer virus? It's a form of malicious software. Viruses attach themselves to other programs, alter the host code, and if it's successful, it replicates itself. And then that code is said to be infected with the virus, right? And then it goes on to affect other code in the other code around it, right? So it spreads between computers and programs, and it's generally attached to the executable files, right? Because that's how it spreads, right? A list of data isn't necessarily going to be able to be executed and then spread itself. It causes performance issues, and that's usually how they're detected, because that spread uses up computer power. Email is a very popular method to spread viruses. There's some kind of executable in the email, you click on it, and then it spreads. Some of the most damaging viruses were My Doom, Shebang, Cleans, I Love You, and WannaCry. I personally had gotten an email with the I Love You virus, which I did not click on, so I did not spread it. But it was, I think, in the 90s, so that one's not that recent, but it still comes up. Even though it's the first time was in the 90s, it's still out there. It'll still come up periodically. And I came into work in the morning and I had an email that was titled, I love you, just like that, no spaces, all capitals, from a woman that I was on a committee with that I did not know very well that said, I love you. I was very thrown by that. And I actually didn't, because I was very thrown by that, I just called my manager over and was like, should I call HR? Because this is very strange. And then all around me, I started to hear people saying, what is this email I have? If I had clicked on it, if I'd opened that email and gone in and clicked to see what she was sending me, every contact in my email, every contact I had would have gotten the virus also. That's how it was spreading itself. A rootkit is a type of malware that is designed to get administrative access to your system. So it makes it extremely dangerous, right? It's actually a set of tools that, again, can actually have when I first started as an SA back in the day, like I said, I have a varied experience. Rootkits weren't necessarily a bad thing, right? If you couldn't get into your system because for some reason you would use the rootkit to get in when no other way would work. But now really they're not used at all because of the security risk of them, right? So they're a set of tools to basically break into a system by obtaining access that you should not have, right? So if you're supposed to have user access, they're a way to kind of break in and get higher access than you're supposed to have. The thing with rootkits is, since you're getting basically administrative access, it's easy. You just write the code to also hide the fact that you ever did what you did, right? So you get in there, you break in, you get the you change all the directory structures and your own access to be root access, and then you go back in and you fix all the access that you had to kind of break to get there, so that you basically have hidden yourself from detection. Once they're in place, they have root access, they have admin access to your system. They can steal passwords, they can steal user data, and they can basically steal computer resources. So a lot of times these are also used to like set up your laptop or your system to become like a bot and be able to run code for other nefarious reasons, right? A very famous rootkit, which was not done for malicious reasons, was the Sony BMG copy protection rootkit, right? So back in 2005, when the music publishing world was all up in arms about people burning CDs and stealing music, Sony came up with this great idea, which is they would send out all their music discs with a free music player, which was not optional. When you loaded the disc into your computer or any thing, it would download this music player, which also came with a rootkit. So, and the idea was it got onto your system with administrative privileges, and whether you loaded one of their CDs or one you burnt or whatever, it would find Sony music and put digital right management on it, so you can no longer burn it using whatever tool, right? So they thought they came up with this great idea, but that's really illegal. You cannot go into people's systems, even if you're Sony, and basically, grab root access and change their operating system. So a class action suit was brought against them. They tried to fix it. When they fixed it, they actually broke the operating system. It was quite an embarrassment for them. It cost them quite a bit of money. Ransomware is in the news quite often now, right? Ransomware is a very big issue currently, right? The most famous case of ransomware was the Colonial Pipeline. And what ransomware does is it is usually a virus or some form of malware that gets into your system, and it uses encryption, right? Uses encryption on your systems, and it usually lays dormant for a while. So it gets in there, corrupts your system, and lays dormant until it's activated, and then it'll go through and just encrypt all your systems, so that the company no longer has access to that system without knowing the decryption key. You're given the decryption key once the ransom's paid, right? But the malware isn't removed, right? So it can still be triggered again. So that's the big risk. I mean, what you really have to do once you get your data back and everything is build a whole new clean system and start from scratch and replicate everything without also replicating the virus. So it's a very expensive issue to get. So what happened with the Colonial Pipeline is they got in using an account that was no longer in use, but had not been deleted. And that's how they got access to the network. So it's a very good case study for what not to do, right? So, making sure you keep your systems clean, of, getting rid of old systems, making sure that you're keeping all old users off the system, all old software off the system, because those are the type of things that malicious actors are looking for. And then there's web-based attacks, right? So all of those other things could be attacking anything, but there are attacks that are specifically targeted at web applications. And those are denial of service attacks or distributed denial of service attacks. And what is denial of service attack is when it's really, not very sophisticated. But if you have like a bot army, like somebody got in, took control of your system and set up a bot, you just flood that system, you flood that service with traffic, with so much traffic that you're hoping to bring it down, bring it to its knees. And it's not always, it's kind of funny because I don't remember, I forget who it was, but a few years ago, K-pop fans did it to somebody who was like racist or something, but they just did it as a group, like actual people did it. So it doesn't always have to be bots, but it usually is bots, and it's usually a malicious actor, right? Just flooding a system to see if they can bring it down because of the load of traffic that system's not expecting. Generally speaking, in sophisticated, like for banks and that type of thing, there's firewall set up to try to identify these denial of service attacks, to keep an eye out for unusual traffic that's hitting a system, hitting a site, hitting a service. And then what generally will happen is they shut it off, right? They shut off that traffic flow, and it could be valid traffic flow, but it's better to shut it off than to have the system crash. The difference between a denial of service attack and a distributive denial of service attack is that a distributed service attack comes from multiple locations, and most of them now are distributed denial of service attacks. Then you have cross-site scripting, which may occur if malicious code is submitted within a comment to a site in a way that when a next user browser tries to display the comment, it actually ends up executing the code. So somebody submits a comment with code embedded in it, and the next user who comes along to read the comment actually executes the code. This usually happens in like online forums and social media platforms if they're not properly secured against these attacks. So websites that allow users to comment on information such as news articles, and this usually happens again, like most sites now have upgraded to put security measures in place for this not to happen. So again, it's very important that you keep your site secure, that you have security in place for your site, and that you are up to date with the most recent version of your web software, and that you keep up to date with the most recent versions of your themes, your web software, and that type of thing, because people are always finding flaws and always exploiting them. Is there a secure procedure to cover all devices? There's not just one procedure to cover everything. You really do have to look at all the pieces of your, in your environment, your operating system, your website. It is difficult, but there are tools out there. Later in the presentation at the end, I put in the site from the government that will tell you like the most recent attacks, the most recent issues that are out there. But really, if you keep, the most important things are keeping everything up to date, everything at the most recent version, making sure you don't have, like I said, unneeded users, unneeded software, unneeded themes, anything like that, so that your system is really just what you need, and up to the most recent versions. And that really will take you, 90% of the way there. And then also have your security software up to date and in place. SQL injections are a lot like the previous attack, a lot like the cross-site scripting, except it's SQL based, right? So it's an SQL injection attack is where they submit data with SQL in it, and then that in such a way is that the SQL commands run rather than being seen as text, and then they can get data back from your system, from your database. And again, they can get anything back from your database that would be in there, such as passwords or pricing information or orders or anything like that. So you just again need to make sure that that you're securing against that. So now you think you can make sure that people can't run code against your system, people can't get to your database, and then path traversal is making sure they can't escape out of your website to get to your files, which is what path traversal allows them to do. It's like being able to escape out of your website to get back to your operating system. It accesses files and directories that are stored outside the web root folders, and it happens when parameters aren't sanitized, and or there's a lack of access control to the resources. And this attack is also known as a .. or directory climbing or backtracking. And then the last one on this list has to do with more network type attacks. And this is like a man in the middle attack. And this is when the attacker inserts themselves between two parties. The goal is to steal the personal information as it travels between the two parties, right? Such as login data, financial data, personal or business data. It's a form of session hacking, right? So other forms of it are sniffing, where somebody actually uses software to intercept the data as it's being sent from your device. So using encryption, using SSL, helps with this, because when they're sniffing it, they're getting the encrypted data, and if they don't have the encryption, it's not going to do them much good. Evil twin is when an attacker duplicates a legitimate Wi-Fi network and then gets people to connect to them instead of the legitimate Wi-Fi network. And you'll see this usually set up like in a coffee shop or an airport, right? So you think you're connecting to the airport's Wi-Fi, and what you're really connecting to is the guy in the seat's Wi-Fi network. And now you're sending your data to him and he can see it. So you really need to be careful whenever you're out in public and connecting to Wi-Fi, that you're really connecting to the legitimate Wi-Fi network and not somebody who's duplicating that Wi-Fi and trying to steal your data. I get a lot of obviously fake invoices from BDF form. All right, we'll get to this. This is the fake invoices is more of a social engineering attack, right? So we'll get to that right next, right? So that type of thing where you're just getting a lot of fake invoices, you're getting email that say you owe people money, or that you've won money, or any of that type of thing, is social engineering, right? That's trying to get you to respond emotionally, or not think something through and take an action. It's a very low tech, right? There's no technology involved in that type of thing if somebody's sending you a fake invoice. And it's very successful in most cases, right? It would be like phishing, right? It's a fraudulent message designed to trick the receiver into revealing personal information, or usually it's used to deploy malicious software, right? It can also be classified as phishing, can also be classified as spear phishing if it goes after a specific person, right? So somebody can be doing phishing in your company and they're just going after anybody to get back to them and get a point into your company to try to get data or information, or they can go after Bob in accounting, right? They may even have done some hunting around on Bob and found out that his dog's name is Snuffles, and that he really likes cheesesteaks, right? So they may contact him about a cheesesteak offer, or they may say they're the gas company and that they had to get into his house, and can they get his social security number so that they can compensate him for the damage? And by the way, his dog Snuffles is at his neighbor, so that he thinks, oh, this must be legitimate. So that's the kind of thing that phishing and spear phishing is. Whaling is when they go after the big guy in your company. They go after your SEO, right? Because that's they're really going after Mary, who started the company, and they tell her yacht is sinking, right? So that's the idea of whaling. Another way of social engineering, or kind of low tech damage that can be done, is infected removable media, right? And those are like thumb drives, right? You see this a lot in conferences or vendors, or different things where they give away free thumb drives with the logo or that type of thing. They can be loaded with malicious software, even if the vendor may not know it. They may have gotten them as a premium from somebody else. But I never use thumb drives that somebody gave me for free, even when they're from like IBM or HP. I never use them because you just don't know. You're putting, there's no way to check before you put them in your computer. And once you put them in your computer, that's it, right? And even if you have the most up-to-date virus software, that thumb drive might have the more up-to-date virus. So, I do use thumb drives, but I use the ones I bought, and they're shrink wrapped and, bought clean, that kind of thing. So just something to be aware of. Another kind of social engineering human error challenge of cybersecurity is fake websites. Fake websites are set up to look like the real site to scam people and to collect data, right? They're set up. So some examples are, there was a trend for a while where bad actors set up fake DMV sites, right? So like you thought you were going to your, Delaware DMV, and instead you were going to a fake DMV, and maybe it was set like dmv.com or dmv.net instead of dmv.gov, and you're so used to typing in .com, it didn't even strike you as odd. And there you are now giving them all your personal information because, you think, well, the DMV does need my social security number and they do need my license plate number. And now you've given a bad actor all of your personal information. It's not always for data gathering. The BBC was the victim of a fake website where somebody just basically spoofed the BBC, and instead of the articles that were on the BBC, they created their own articles because they didn't like the bent of the BBC. It was more of a political action. So to spot a fake website, when you're on a site, especially if you're going to give them any personal data, look very closely at the domain name, right? Think, does .com really make sense for DMZ or for the FBI? Check the subdomain, right? Make sure it doesn't say fbi.gov.com, right? And check the quality of the site. Are there misspellings? Are the photos blurry? Do the photos make sense? Is there more than one page? Does it have all the details that you would expect in a DMV? Is there information about how to get your driver's license? Like, there would be stuff on a DMV, maybe more than what you were looking for that you would expect. So just like, especially before you give personal information, just take a second look at it. Another way of cybersecurity issues in a non-technical way is impersonation, right? And this is literally a totally low-tech way of getting your data. And it's people who dress up as delivery people, especially construction people, and they come into your site. They might even set up cones around your data center, and then they get somebody to let them in because people think, oh, here's a construction worker who needs to come in and work on the systems, or here's somebody from HP who needs to come in and work on our systems. And then they can steal equipment, they can steal removable media, they can steal files. So again, it's very low tech. It is, literally just good old-fashioned theft, but they are stealing your data. And then there's dumpster diving, where they, literally just do that, go through your dumpster. So make sure you shred all sensitive information. Scareware. I don't know what the person used about the invoices, but maybe they're saying we're going, all your inventory is going to be shut down or going to be repossessed if you don't pay this invoice. That's the kind of scareware they can use. Or everybody, I don't know if everybody got them, but I certainly got those calls from the IRS saying that I was going to be arrested if I didn't pay them, right? That's scareware, right? Where they're trying to use shock and anxiety to make you not think through the situation, right? To not, to not say, is this invoice a valid invoice? I don't remember using this company, right? Especially I would think if you have a company where there's multiple people ordering, you may think, well, I didn't order this, but maybe, Bob in accounting ordered this. So maybe I'll just pay it and then talk to Bob later, especially if it says it's past due, right? So that's the kind of thing that scareware is going to do. And again, it's a social engineering thing. They're not really using technology to do it, but they're, still stealing money and data from you. And then there's, just very simple things like shoulder surfing, which I myself do if I'm on an airplane and the guy next to me is using his laptop because I'm very bored and I'm curious as to what they're doing, right? I mean, I'm not looking to steal their corporate secrets, but I do look over to see what they're doing, right? And that's basically shoulder surfing. And that's really just an awareness when you're using your computer for company business of who's around you and what you're doing, right? Because, maybe I'm just a curious woman sitting next to him, but that person doesn't know if I'm not their competitor or not press or, whatever, right? And the same goes for eavesdropping, except that's talking about, your company, talking about your business in public and who could be overhearing. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple questions. I think I answered a couple of them. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right, so we talked about the threats. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do to answer those threats. Okay, so the most fundamental thing you can do if you have a website is to absolutely make sure you have SSL in place. Now, SSL is actually, everybody calls it SSL still, but that's actually the older technology. The newer technology, which absolutely you probably have in place, is transport layer security, but I guess people like saying SSL better than TLS, right? So it was developed in 1995 by Netscape to ensure privacy and data integrity. And what it basically does is it sets up a secure channel between two machines. That's all it does, right? It doesn't ensure your website, right? Because it's not encrypting anything. It's not encrypting anything from the network back. It's encrypting that channel when you're talking on the internet. You can determine if you have SSL enabled in your URL, if you have that little lock or it has HTTPS, right? And basically how it works is the client connects to the secure server. The server provides a digital certificate. It confirms that it's the authenticity. And then there's a handshake begins, the secure connection, the data encryption happens, and then the session closes. And that encryption key is only good that one time. And that's what makes it secure. It's not like somebody can grab that key and then every time you talk, it's got your key. It's that transient nature of that key. Somebody grabs it and it's no good for them, no good to them anymore, right? So that's SSL. The other really serious thing you need to do is have excellent password management. And this can be a complete pain, and I completely understand it, but it's critical. I just read something, and I meant to put it on here, that now password decryptors can break a really secure 8-character password. And that's one that uses numbers, characters, upper lowercase characters, special characters in 4 seconds if it's 8 characters. So you can have the most, makes no sense to anyone, 8-character password. And if somebody goes after that password for you and it's 8 characters, they can crack it in 8 seconds. Where if it's 12 characters, it takes something like 7 days or 7 years, something. So the difference is huge in the length of your password. So a minimum of 12 characters, and that is probably going to go up every single year because those password decryption tools get smarter and smarter. Now they're using optical algorithms to crack passwords. It's amazing. I think if there's people who create them only put their mind to curing cancer. So minimum of 12 characters, more even better. Use a mix of upper, lowercase, numbers, and special characters. Do change it often. Use multi-factor authentication, which is, so multi-factor authentication is something you know and something you have, right? Generally speaking. It can also be something you know and something you are, like knowing a password and having a fingerprint, that type of thing. But so the idea is you know your password and then it also sends you a token on your phone. So you know your password and you have your phone, right? So that's the idea. Do secure your passwords because you cannot use the same password on multiple sites or multiple things, right? Because if somebody cracks, so say you have a site to buy shoes, so you're on Zappo.com, you have a site for your shoes, buying shoes, but even that one probably has your security or has your credit card on there, so that's maybe not a good one, but we're just going to say that one. You don't want that same password to also be used on your bank account, right? Because if somebody breaks into your Zappos right, account, then there's a limited amount of damage they can do, although they could buy a lot of shoes. But you don't want them also to be able then to go to Bank of America, use that same user ID and password, and clean out your accounts, right? So you definitely want to use different passwords on different sites, and you're never going to remember them, and you don't want to write them down, because this is a joke. This is a joke and not a suggestion, right? So there's password tools such as LastPass and 1Password that you just kind of have to remember that one password. I would definitely make it more than 12 characters, this 1Password, and then you can store the other passwords and retrieve them when you need to. And again, avoid writing down the passwords. Avoid the name of pets, family, birth dates, etc. Those are the kind of things you're also probably going to mention on social media. You can maybe have them send emails. You know, people at work are going to know them. Not that you don't trust the people at work, but you never know, right? So don't use those things. Avoid words found in the dictionary, because those cracker tools I was talking about that can now crack an 8-character password in seconds. Also have all those words in the dictionary in those crackers, and they run through them all, and they substitute numbers. Like they substitute the numbers for the letters. So if you wanted to say, you know, flower, it's gonna try flower, and then it's gonna try flower with a 0 for the O, and then 1 for the L. You know, it's gonna go through all of that. Don't reuse old passwords, because it may already have cracked that and associate it with your name, and it's maybe going to try that again and again and again just to see if you've reused that old password. Avoid the obvious letter replacements. Don't post data on social media, because again, they could use it against you. Don't use the same password on multiple accounts, because if they break into one system, you don't want them, they will try that, especially on banking accounts, on other systems. Don't share your password. And absolutely don't avoid passwords that have already been compromised. You might think, well, that was 3 years ago, that was 4 years ago, but you know, computers have there's a memory, storage is cheap, and criminals are criminals, right? So they're going to store that, and just they're just going to hit against it, right, over and over, just to see if it works, especially on things again like banking systems and that type of thing. So it might seem like it was 3 years to you, but for them, there's no real cost in trying it, today, tomorrow, the next day. Worked once, maybe it'll work again, right? For using the network in a space sharing facility, we are going to talk about VPN, but I would definitely set up a virtual private network, and then use your virtual private network while you're on the space sharing network, right? So that even though you're on that common network, you're going through a virtual private network. Okay, so the other thing you want to do for your systems, especially your work systems, is use the principle of least privilege, right? And that principle, and I love the idea it's a principle, it makes it sound so important, and it is important, but it says if access is not needed, then access should not be given, right? So Bob in accounting should only have access to the accounting systems, right? So if your company is a shipping company, Bob shouldn't also have access to scheduling the forklifts, right? Because Bob doesn't need to schedule the forklifts. He shouldn't also have access to the payroll system, probably, right? Although he may need to as an accountant, but I'm just saying he should only have access to what he needs access to. It might seem easier, right? Like, what if Mary in forklift is out? Maybe then Bob could fill in for her. But if something goes wrong, you won't know who did what, who had access to what. If Bob becomes disgruntled, you want to limit what he can do, right? You don't want him to smash all the fork trucks into each other, right? You want to make sure that people can only access what they need to access, and only when they need to access it, right? It reduces the chance of vulnerabilities of one application being used to exploit the rest of the machine. And even if you trust Bob explicitly or implicitly, if his access gets corrupted, you know that malicious actor, his access is also limited. Okay. And then this is what I was talking to before, when the question was like, well, how do we make sure that we've done everything? A big part of security is making sure your systems are clean and working well and backed up and all of that, right? And then also having the security tools, right? So while it might not seem like security work, keeping your systems and application up to date and well maintained is critical to keeping your data secure. Criminals absolutely keep track of vulnerabilities and the versions of applications and operating systems, right? So you want to back up regularly, and you want to know where those backups are. You want to keep different intervals of backups. You know, you may want to have a monthly backups for 12 months somewhere, and then, you know, weekly and, daily backups. You want to install operating system and program updates. You absolutely want to install anti-malware software, both at the operating system level and then, you know, at the application level and the websites level. You want to keep your website software, themes, and plugins patched. You want to keep your security software up to date, right? You don't want to just put it on there and then not keep it up to date, because viruses are constantly evolving, and you want to make sure you're keeping everything up to date to catch them. You want to delete unused or unnecessary user accounts. You want to use complex passwords, and you don't perform sensitive tasks over public Wi-Fi or an unencrypted connection. All right. So this is what I was talking about before. The other thing that that's also a very good idea, especially if you are working in a common area. If you generally travel and you need to, work in the if you do need to work in the airport, you need to work in Panera, you work in WeWork. Virtual private networks is where this really comes into play, and I use one myself. It's a overlay network built with virtual tunnels in which the tunnel payloads are encrypted and authenticated. All right. Real private networks provide security by physically separating the underlying communications media, right? So short of a physical wiretap, the attacker doesn't have access to the network traffic, right? So those are like T1 lines, like the big phone lines that come into a company. And I've worked at companies where they had their own T1 lines, right? Like banks and chemical companies, right? So the only way people were going to get to that data going into the data center or that type of thing was to actually go out and physically tap that line. Most of us can't afford that, right? So a virtual private network is a way to kind of mimic that, having my own. And when I'm talking lines, I'm not talking like the phone line that's coming into your house. I'm talking like those big, big round lines you see the phone company putting in, underground. That's like a T1 line, right? So a virtual private network is a way to kind of mimic that through software, right? The tunnel is a virtual construct using shared state at the tunnel endpoints, right? It does slow things down a little bit because everything's encrypted. And it's a way, remember I said that this SSL was just from here on, but not here back. A virtual private network makes it more like here back. It's more encrypted, over your existing network inside here, not just over the internet. And it prevents data sniffing and disclosure of private information. And the transmission is encrypted and secure. And then to further secure it, you can put a firewall in also. And that provides a method of enforcing access control policies, right? So it can actually say this data can come in, this data can't come in, this data can come in only if it's coming from this port. And you don't have to get that crazy about it, right? A personal firewall will usually protect only the computer in which it's installed, and it will allow a security policy to be defined for an individual computer, whereas conventional firewalls control the policy between the network it connects, right? Macs and PCs both have built-in firewalls that help shield your computer from malicious cyber attacks, right? And that's been in the last, like 10 years that's been in place. If you want extra layer protection, you can purchase and download additional personal firewalls. They do packet instruction. Now, if you have a really secure company, or you make, explosive devices, something that explodes, or highly secure data, you can set up a DMZ, right? So a DMZ is a subnetwork between the public and the private network. And you basically set up two firewalls. You have an external firewall and then like an internal firewall. And what's between them are things like FTP, web servers, and mail servers. So it's stopping the traffic. It stops what traffic comes in. Those functions are kind of in here because they are external facing to the web, and the only traffic that comes into your actual company is stuff that's internal facing. So it's just a way to really secure the information. When you're working with any kind of financial, financial, or most governments, functions, I would think would have it, things like that. Bigger companies have DMZs, which I constantly call DMVs, by the way, just my own problem. Okay, so some emerging threats, just because there's always new emerging threats to look out for this year, are something that are being called software supply chain vulnerabilities. And they occur when cyber threats infiltrate a software vendor's network and employ malicious code to components of software before that vendor sends it to the customers, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard of the Log4j vulnerability, but not this Christmas, but the previous Christmas when I did work with Bank of America, it pretty much killed my Thanksgiving and Christmas because it was a vulnerability that was in Java and it was everywhere, right? And it was in legacy software everywhere, software that hadn't been touched in like 15 years, some newer software, but also software that hadn't been touched in 15 years. And the question was, how do we update this really old software to remove this vulnerability without breaking the software? Is this needed in this old software? So it's a vulnerability that's found in a component that's very embedded in your software chain across the board. And I cannot even tell you the hours of work that it took across. And what this type of vulnerability is doing is it's making cybersecurity not a cybersecurity issue anymore. It's making it a across the board IT issue because everybody has to get on board to resolve it, because there's no way just our cyber department could have resolved this. Everybody had to get in and work 85 hours a week for 2 months to resolve this issue. And things like that are going to become more the norm, because again, it's kind of embedded into the software supply chain. So something to think about. And SolarWinds, I don't know if you guys remember SolarWinds, but that was actually like a threat that was tied back to Russia. It was the same kind of idea. It was embedded into the software. And that one was more, Log4j wasn't really, well, they weren't really sure, but SolarWinds was like something triggered by like Russia. And it was they actually had and that was not as bad because it wasn't so embedded into the legacy software. It was more like there was newer products that were bought, but actually had multiple, like they triggered multiple vulnerabilities, like time apart. So, yep. Another new one is data poisoning. As more and more companies are rolling out AI systems to kind of provide more data to customers, to do like even financial counseling and, put them there in as experts, AI systems, as experts, data poisoning becomes more of an issue. And what happens is, as opposed to corrupting those executables and corrupting, trying to spread that, they actually go in and corrupt the data that the AI is using. So now the AI is giving poor results, which is very hard to find, right? Because it's not like it's using up all your operating system, but say you have a AI that's supposed to give health advice, and now you poison the data and it's giving the wrong health advice. So it's using AI systems to skew results. So now there's security measures that need to go in around that. For new technology, it's just making sure you're keeping up with all the new technology and getting cyber security tools in place. Like the newest ways to secure things is with biometrics and behavior-based password type things. So it's not going to be just what you know and what you have, but it's also how you pick up your phone and put your thumb on it, right? Like that type of thing. because even biometrics, like using your thumb was considered to be like so secure, nobody could crack it. And then people found how to get that file off your phone and use it to crack into other things, right? So whatever we come up with, there's somebody who's trying to figure out how to do it. So now, is it enough just to have your thumb, or is it also how you put, not just that you have your thumbprint that matches, but how you put your thumb on that phone, right? That's the kind of thing, that's like the new technology, first biometrics, but now it's going to, now they're working on like behavior-based security. And then, and then cloud security, as we move our files and our data away from, company-owned data centers out to the cloud, we have to worry about configuration management, data encryption at rest, right? Because even when we talked about VPNs and we talked about SSL, that was all about data as it was moving somewhere, right? Data as it was moving from one system to another, data as it was moving within our organization, right? So now their data is at a cloud, and it's vulnerable to people getting to our data when it's at rest. So that's, that's the new area. So it's about encrypting our cloud storage. How do we, containers, containers are a way to bring up new systems very quickly, because you're cloning, you're cloning what it is. What happens when somebody corrupts what that clone is, right? So now you're bringing up a new system, but somebody's corrupted that image. Now you're bringing up the wrong type of system with the wrong type of thing. So how do you put security around the building of that container? So that's the whole idea of like cloud security and the new technology. So these are all new things, that people are working on around security threats for this year, and there'll be new ones as we go through this year and into 2024, because it's always somebody's trying to break whatever people are fixing. This link here that'll be in the charts is a government website that will show you like the current security threats and some of the things that have been in the wild right now that have been caught and that type of thing. So if you can't sleep and you want to have nightmares, it's a good site to go to. So if anybody has any questions, we can go over them now. Okay, does using an email client like Apple Mail increase or reduce vulnerabilities? I'm not really familiar with Apple Mail, so I can't really say. In general, mail system, like using a mail system that has a really good spam filter helps reduce vulnerabilities, right? Because it's filtering out it filters out a great deal of that scareware and phishing and those type of things. So they're not even coming to you to be a threat. So I'm not too familiar with Apple Mail, but if you're using a good mail system, a lot of those social site threats will get filtered out and won't even get to you. You may want to check in there every now and again, because one of the things that also goes in there is like the threatening emails that tell you that your password's been hacked, which is kind of good to know, so that you know not to use that password. And the next question is social engineering categorized as both unauthorized access, malicious attacks, or both? It really depends on what the social engineering action was, right? It really depends. Like if somebody's used social engineering to get access to your system, might get somebody to give you the user ID and password, then it's considered unauthorized access. If they've used social engineering to, physically, usually it's unauthorized access, but it is also a malicious attack. But sometimes social engineering, like I said, for that K-pop group, they actually use people to do a distributed denial of service attack. It wasn't bots. And in that case, that would be more considered a malicious attack, even though, like I said, it was against somebody who had done something pretty horrible. But you know. Okay, when regularly backing up our data, how can we protect the backup drive from accidentally putting malware onto it and infecting it? You can't. And that's also what happened to Colonial Pipeline. They had backups, and all the backups had the malware on it. And that's why the malware people did not trigger the malware right away, right? They let it sit there for quite some time until they figured that all the backup copies also were infected. Right? And that's why I was suggesting that you not just have a week's worth of backups, but that you maybe do like 12-month full backups and keep them not on your drive, but potentially in the cloud or someplace else. And then the other recommendation for backups is, oh, it's not on this one, it's another presentation I do, which is for backups is the 3, right? A rule of 3, which is you have 1 live, 1 local, and 1 offsite, right? So that all of your backups are not in the same location. For that reason, like the backup for like if there's malware, but also if something, you know, God forbid, happened to that physical location and destroyed that drive, at least you'd have one like up in the cloud, or even, you know, even if it was on a different drive, maybe you take that drive to your sister's or something, so it's not physically in the same location. But that is a concern. And like I said, that's exactly what they did on Colonial Pipeline. They got in, they put the malicious software in there, and they waited. And then that's why they couldn't just restore it, because even the backups were corrupted. Okay, any more questions?
Quick one before we continue with the question. Just wanted to draw this to our attention, most especially to my wonderful attendees. I did posted a 30-second survey about today's webinar, so kindly take 30 seconds of your time. So please help us to fill it out, please. Thank you.
Okay, and while you're filling it out, I'll talk about, so on here, I also have some additional resources for cybersecurity, and along with the presentation, we'll be sending you a guide with very good information from like the SBDC. So it has a lot of really good information. It's not too long, and it's pretty easy read. So here's some additional information that will help, you know, with different questions, like some additional information about VPNs. And thank you for joining us today. And please complete the survey. It helps us with our grant that helps us keep going with these programs. The small business consulting, you can sign up in our business portal, and we have additional services along with this, like business planning and graphic designs, and help you with some legal, if you have legal questions. And if you would like to see about upcoming training events, you can scan this QR code, and it will show you what upcoming training events we have coming. And if you want to connect with us, this is the SBDC Temple's email address. And if you scan this lovely other QR code that says scan me, you can sign up for our newsletter.
Before we wrap it up for the day, just want to use this opportunity to thank each and every one of you guys for keeping it a day with us. Sheila, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Once again, I also want to acknowledge the contributions of all my Temple SBDC colleagues. Without them, we wouldn't have been here for the webinar. Thank you guys for your wonderful cooperation. Thank you for your wonderful assistance. And I think in the absence of any other team on board, we'll just call it off for the day. Thank you guys.
And it will be, somebody asked, it will be sent by email. The presentation will be sent by email. And again, like I said, there will be another document attached to with additional cybersecurity information.
Yeah, from now to 48 hours, promise I will get a copy of the PowerPoint and the link to the recording to each and every one of you guys. Thank you guys once again, and do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.